Hi there. Today we're going to talk about those people who are obliviously obnoxious. You know, those people who cut you off in traffic, who cut you off when you're standing in line. You know, those people who are just absolutely so annoying on their cell phone, on speakerphone, walking through the mall, walking through the store, who are just so incredibly rude, and they're oblivious to it. Well, today we're going to discuss that with my very special guest.
You need to watch this woman's show.
Welcome to Millena, the talk show, where we talk about things that everyone thinks about but rarely ever says.
And I want you to make sure you tune in with Millena, because she's a friend of mine. Keep it real.
Welcome to Millena, the talk show. Today we're going to be discussing obliviously obnoxious people. Those people who cut you off in line, who just are on their cell phone, on speakerphone, and who are just absolutely rude, but they don't even realize they're rude, or do they? And we're going to talk about that with Lord Jimmy Wilson, a highly acclaimed life coach. Welcome to the show, Lord Jimmy Wilson.
Thank you for having me.
So first thing, I'm sure the viewers would like to know, your title is Lord Jimmy Wilson. Now, are you of British nobility that we should know about?
Not quite. My family has owned the same land, which I'm heir to, since like 1870.
1870?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We've been on the same land.
Okay.
So I'm heir to that land, which makes me a landlord.
Oh.
So that's part of it. The other part is I hold myself to a higher standard, and also I expect other people to do the same.
Well, that is what makes you a great life coach, I'm sure, holding
go.
people to that higher standard.
That's right.
So if anybody you can't just own property, you have to own the land, and you
own
can
the
be
land.
called a lord.
That's right.
Good to know, good to know.
I promise people only have one definition for words, so they have to expand themselves a little.
Okay, so you are a life coach.
Yes.
Now, for those who don't know exactly what a life coach is, it's someone to help you get your life, perhaps, most people might think. Can you expand a little bit more on exactly what it is that you do, so then people will understand how you're qualified to explain these people who are just obliviously obnoxious and so rude that drive us crazy?
Sure. So there's several different life coaches. There are people who just give advice. There
Okay.
are people who teach you how to cope with whatever problems you have, or just give you labels and drugs. So you can tell people all sorts of things. My practice is a little bit more finding the root cause of the problem, solving that, and then helping you get back to normal. Yeah, so it's a little different. It's kind of like the difference between just driving a car and knowing how to actually fix one or build one even at a higher level. So it's that approach to life.
Okay. So you get to the root of the problem. So
right.
how we're going to figure this out is why people are so rude. Let's just jump right in. And first of all, let's get comfy. Let's get real. Let's kick our shoes off and relax. And let's get into what the problem is.
Okay.
So now I read a story a little while ago. Very interesting. So there was another Lord Winston, not Churchill, but Lord Winston, Jimmy Winston, I think, James Winston, I believe.
Winston.
And he was on a train going somewhere from one place to another. And he was sitting there reading a book, minding his business. And on this train, there was another passenger. Now, she had with her a young child, about 8 or 9 years old. And she was completely ignoring him. And she decided she was going to be on her cell phone very loudly. It wasn't on speaker,
Right.
but she was speaking. They were in first class. And so it's very
Sure.
quiet there.
He was projecting.
But she was projecting, and she was right in front of him. And this went on for 15 minutes, then a half an hour, and then 45 minutes, almost 1 hour. She was almost yelling on the telephone.
Right.
And he was fit to be tied. And so what he did, because he had about 40,000 social media followers, so what he did was he decided to quietly tweet about her to his followers and how rude she was and how obnoxious she was. So when they got to the stop, he got off and went on his way. She gets off the train And there all these people surround her, all television personalities
Right.
and newspapers. And so, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And why were you so loud on that? And she's like, what are you talking about? She had no idea
Right.
what was going on. But he had tweeted about how rude she was. And so then, once they enlightened her to exactly what was happening, you know what she said?
What'd she say?
How rude. She called him rude.
Of course.
And she was the one being rude. So
He was in her business.
He was in, but she made it his business by being so. So how would you, in that situation, is that something that you would suggest someone do, like, or condone, or how would you, in order to, what would you do, what would you have said to the gentleman instead of posting on social media, or how would you suggest would be the most effective way to deal with that situation?
Right. So first you have to kind of break it down a little bit and understand what's going on. So we all have been told that America is a melting pot of cultures, but it's also a melting pot of classes. So we assume because we were raised a certain way, or we were raised properly, or we have social graces and social manners, that everyone should behave that way, or everyone has that as a background, and they just don't. So you first have to understand things.
Yeah.
And that person has as much right to exist as you do if you're in the same class of vehicle.
Okay.
So that's why people pay for first class. That's why people have, exclusive communities, so they can curtail their exposure.
Yes, yes.
But most people are just functioning in their own reality. It's not really a real to them that other people are there. It's kind of like their own, like a baby doesn't perceive beyond its own viewpoints.
Right.
It doesn't understand danger and traffic and all the things that can happen from eating the wrong things. So that's why we have to protect children. So it's the same way with other people. So now the solution is get a headset. Have something to occupy your time.
Well, if he didn't, he was on a train. He wasn't prepared for this intrusion in his personal space, in his peace, in his Zen zone.
Right.
He wasn't prepared for this intruder.
Yeah.
So how would he have? Should he have gotten up and addressed her specifically and said, would you mind calming down or quietly speaking, or should he pass her a note perhaps, or like what would be the proper thing to do? Because honestly, calling her out on social media, a lot of people do that nowadays.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
It's all about your personality. I just, it's kind of like going outside and being offended because the bugs are bothering you, right? They have as much right to be there as you do. And
Right.
More often than not, we're intruding on their life.
Right.
So when you are around different socioeconomic classes or different people, you have to understand that these things are going to happen. So the proper way to do anything is to there's always someone in charge of the environment or the situation, and if you can get with that person and get them to kind of, reacquaint them with the rules of norm, then that would be the best way to handle it. But the ultimate best way is to give them the look, and if that doesn't work, then just mind your own business somehow.
The look. Well,
The look.
Well, okay, speaking of the look, let's say you're driving in traffic. And it goes to this point of what you're just saying, that they just don't know.
Right.
Some people just don't know what's right and what's wrong because they have not had etiquette training or etiquette class or watched a video on YouTube or anything. They just simply don't know. But, as they say, ignorance is not an excuse. It's really not. So if someone were to come to, let's say someone came to you and said, oh my goodness, I was in such a rage. I was so upset because someone cut me off in traffic.
Right.
And just didn't control myself. And you gave them the look. And then they look back or they do something profane.
Give you sign language.
Give you sign language. I like that. I was trying to say that nicely.
Right.
So then what do you do to, not have this affect you? Because, people say, oh my gosh, I was just cut off. I was just,
Sure.
And it can really impede being in that happy place, in that peaceful place, or that place of concentration that's needed.
Right. Well, even I'm not immune to it, but the idea is when you have a situation, you have to consider what is that person going through. We are all subject to going through emotional crises. Whenever someone's upset and I'm dealing with them, my first question is, did you sleep? Have you eaten? I don't talk to people who haven't eaten because we are biochemical animals, and so if our body rudiments are not in, then we're going to behave adversely. So I always try to make sure that I'm checking those factors before I engage someone.
Really?
And then, you know, my thing is the 2 rules for happy living was be able to experience anything and then cause those things that other people can experience easily. So that way you kind of have allowances made for all the things you're going to run into dealing with this melting pot of people and cultures and, you know, classes.
In classes.
In classes.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Going back to that point about you, so you always ask people, have they eaten and how did they sleep?
100%
And I mean, there is an expression. It's a new expression called hangry.
Yeah, as a little funny tidbit, I before I was a life coach, before I was, you know, all these things, I was married, and my wife would call me, and she would just be going off, and I would just be about to go in a rage, and I would hang up on her. And which she hated, but I did it anyway. But then I would eat something because I realized I was going to behave badly because I haven't eaten. So I would eat something and then call it back and blame it on the signal.
Oh!
The other show.
Oh my gosh, that's another show. That's a lie.
That's right. But it stopped me from responding to her anger, and I was able to get myself under control and then handle her appropriately. So I didn't perpetuate it, because a lot of times when people behave that way, then it affects you. Then you take it out on the people at work or your dog or your kids, and it just keeps going on. It's like a contagion.
Right.
You know, so I try to stop that by making sure I'm in control of myself.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good way to be, because it snowballs.
Yeah.
Because then if you take it out on your kids might take it out on other kids on the playground or their brother or sister, and then it just keeps going, and it's a vicious
Right.
cycle. And
Displaced aggression.
displaced aggression.
Right.
Exactly. It's a terrible thing. It's terrible. So, okay, so if you're standing in line, right, and minding your business, and the next thing you know, and this has happened to me, where I'm just standing in line waiting to get on a plane, and the next thing you know, some people just ease up and just try to get in front of me. Like, what, am I not here? Like, what is going on? So a part of me wants to say out loud, like, am I not here? Like, hello, what is going on?
Right.
But I don't. It depends, exactly as you said. Depends on my mood.
Sure.
Depends on if I feel like maybe getting into a confrontation, or I just might let it go. It also depends on what time that flight is.
That's right.
So what is the best way? Okay, because, you know, what you suggested was dealing with hungry or tired.
Right.
Okay, but how do you, or is there a way, you can't control other people?
That's right. So you have to assess a lot of things in any human interaction, right? You want to look at, I always go, what is the cost? What is the cost? Like, pick your battles. You hear people say, pick your battles.
Yes.
So is it really worth it? If you're on a flight where you have an assigned seat and that person jumps in front of you, does it really matter? You're going to get to your seat. Right. If you're on Southwest or something like that, then maybe it's more important.
Maybe it matters.
Check. So, but that's kind of how I do it. It's like you communicate. Always, communication is always key. Speak to people like they matter, and because they're oblivious, they may not be paying attention. Then just a communication could handle it.
Okay, so just look, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
You might not have.
Yeah, and it's happened to me because they're on the phone, because their mind is somewhere else, which is the real problem. Just reminding them and snapping them out of what they're in would be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, or oh, I'm sorry, I was just going and didn't really recognize what I was doing, and that'll handle it sometimes.
That's true, because a lot of people, like you said, they just don't know, and if they don't know, maybe it may not come from their lack of training. It just may be that they are just completely in another world, completely oblivious to the fact that they're being obnoxious. And once they realize that, then they will come to themselves. As a good friend of mine says, come to themselves and apologize. And I feel like most people are inherently good.
Sure.
I want to believe that. Is that true? I mean, you deal with
80%.
80%.
80%. There's 20% that are really bad and 5% that are really evil. So
oh my goodness.
It's all in there. That's why I call it a melting pot. You have to deal with it all. So, but it's really clear when you're dealing with someone who's that bad, you can almost feel it. So it's not the norm, but there are people you have to watch out for.
We're going to get into that, because I want to know, and I'm sure the viewers want to know, how can you tell that 20% what are the signals, the 20% that you really should stay away from.
Right.
So stay right there.
Okay.
Stay right there. We'll be right back with more from Millena the Talk Show and our guest, Lord Jimmy Wilson. Be right back.
The Las Vegas Review-Journal is the largest and most widely read and visited news and information source in Nevada. As the region's most trusted independent news media company, the award-winning Las Vegas Review-Journal has been serving Southern Nevadans for more than 100 years. The multimedia news, information, and entertainment company owns a strong portfolio of print and digital niche products, including The Neon, Luxury Las Vegas Magazine, El Tiempo, LVRJ.com. Visit mylvrj.com today.
Welcome back. We're here with Lord Jimmy Wilson, and we left off when we were discussing the 20% of people who are just mean.
Right.
Please expand on that. How do you tell these 20% of these people?
Well, that's the easy part, because they're dramatizing. You see it. These are the people that make you irritated. These are the people that are running around and doing things obliviously. They are functioning in their own bubble, and you're irritating them by even noticing what they're doing. So it's a horrible situation. So the way it works is that you have 5% of the population that are really evil, and then they motivate these 15% to be dramatizing. That's what you run into, whether it's economic or situational or just, like I said, bad motivation from whatever. But that's what we're dealing with in society, is this 15% that are motivated and acting out.
And because they're just blindly following this 5% that they believe in, that they listen to, that they worship, quote unquote, that whatever they say, they just blindly go and do. And so, wow, that's deep.
Yeah.
Wow. So how would just a regular one of the 80%, how would one of the 80% combat one of these 15%?
Well, again, short of amazing communication skills, I call them Jedi mind tricks because it can get that way sometimes. You have to just acknowledge and prioritize how important is this confrontation in the scheme of your life. Because again, this is this person's whole life. They're going to deal with this every single day. It's just something you're exposed to for a short period of time. So is it really worth engaging? You'll have a lot more to lose than them, so they can just act all the way out and go crazy, but you have consequences to your behavior. So that's why we have to pick our battles and tolerate some things and just realize that these people don't have the same upbringing, they don't have the same opportunities, and this is just where they're at.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. That takes a lot of self-centering. That takes a lot of patience. That takes a lot. Now, you were telling me while we were on the break about your just hot button ones, and one of them is in the airport.
I'm not supposed to have weaknesses.
I know, but you're human. Albeit a lord, you're still human.
Yeah.
So tell everyone about these things that just really get your goat, and how do you deal with them?
Well, when you're trying to get to your flight, there are people who are not in a hurry. So there'll be a volleyball team or something. There's 5 people, and they'll just fan out across the whole thoroughfare to where you can't get past them.
Right.
Or a senior citizens group, and instead of walking single file, they're all the way across. So those things, and then people who just stop in the middle of a walkway and are having a full conversation.
Yes.
So those things irritate me, because those are situations where you should know better.
Right. Right, absolutely.
No different than someone driving 55 in the fast lane. Like, these things are irritating.
Okay, well, to the defense of the people driving 55 in the fast lane, I used to do that.
Is that you?
No, I don't do that anymore. Now I go 90. But I'm just saying. And then people are still blowing by me like, what are you doing? And so I just, I go 90. But long ago, all the way last week and stuff, I used to go, and I was being helpful, because I would drive in the fast lane, but I would go in the speed limit in the fast lane. Because I was helping other people. I know, right? I was helping other people not get tickets, not be inconvenienced by getting pulled over. Like, all of that, I was helping them.
Okay, so straight away, you made my point. So you're doing what you think is the right thing to do.
Right.
Or what what's motivating you is
Right.
how everyone else should see it.
Yeah.
That's
Like
exactly
following the law?
Well, hey, that's exactly what other people are doing, but the whole purpose of freedom is that you have the right
To break
do
the
it
law.
until you get caught. It's only illegal if you get caught. Just
Oh,
kidding.
that's terrible. But my
that's-
motivations
yeah.
were good. I wanted to help
Sure.
them, to save them. I wasn't having a bad, trying to
Sure.
do anything malicious. I was trying to help them.
And the reason why we have to be tolerant is because the person who is driving 80 trying to get to work because they're going to get fired if they are late one more time might not agree with you.
Ah,
See?
okay.
So it's all situational. So that's why you have to put yourself into another person's shoes and understand maybe they have a reason for behaving that way. And there was an episode of Twilight Zone where someone was speeding and the guy wouldn't let them pass for similar reasons, but they had a person who had been injured in the car and they were trying to get to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And so again, you have to know what the situation is and why people are doing what they're doing, but because you can't, that's why you have to be tolerant with people.
Oh,
You can't know everybody's situation.
right.
Yeah.
Definitely can't. You
Yeah.
can't. And wow. And everyone needs to be dealt with in patience and in love.
There you go.
Yes.
Right.
Some scientists have described rudeness as a neurotoxin.
Okay.
That's just what they've described it as. And it actually affects people so negatively. It makes them less attentive, worse at their jobs, and more aggressive.
Mhm.
So what do you have to say about that?
Well, you have to understand, like, we're very composite beings, mind, body, and spirit. So there's an animalistic side to us that when we are provoked or engaged by things that we feel are threats or that we can't deal with, then we have physiological responses like adrenaline and all these chemicals that pump into our bodies. Then that's what causes us to behave a certain way. So again, when someone's gassed up on one of these chemicals, you're not going to be able to talk them down.
Right.
So that's why I say choose your battles. That's why I say, you have to live at the top of your virtues, whatever they are, because you're going to have to deal with people who don't have them. And you can't just go shove cookies in people's mouths just to get their blood sugar evened out. Like, you just have to, when you approach an aggressive animal, you just walk away. You don't try to talk it down.
That's true. That's true. When you have an aggressive animal, you do just walk away. You should. But sometimes, honestly, and you have to admit, sometimes it's not that easy.
It's not.
Sometimes if someone cuts you off in traffic, sometimes you don't want to just say, oh, can I let it go? Have you been that person? I know a lot of our viewers have been in that situation. I know I've been in that situation.
Right.
That you cut me off, well, doggone it, I'm going to cut you off too. I'm going to go back and cut you off.
Yeah.
So it triggers revenge, which is not the healthiest. It is the absolute worst, but it does trigger that. So how do you combat that desire, that payback?
Mm-hmm. So you spoke of science. You've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, you're supposed to evolve. You're supposed to be a more evolved person.
Right.
So that is your goal. So how you behave, your body's going to give you signals, but your body always gives you signals. You're hungry, you're tired, you're lazy, but you have things to do. So you have to control yourself to do the things that you have to do in life.
Right.
This is no different. Because other people are behaving badly, you still have, it's incumbent on you to control yourself and behave according to your ideals. Because if not, you're a push button animal as well, because you can just be happy and then someone can do something and it changes your whole mood. So that's why each of us has to be in control of ourselves, because if not, you're just like a pinball machine running around and everyone's making you feel how they want you to feel.
Oh, and that's not okay.
Slavery.
That is right. That's not okay. So what are some tips that you can help us with? Like, what are some of the things that you tell your clients to, get back into their, as I like to call it, the Zen zone?
Sure.
Where that is just, I know that there's one technique, the elevator technique, where you just don't let anything bother you, where they can push. You know how sometimes you go to an elevator and you push and push. No matter how many times you push it, it's not coming any faster.
Right.
It's going to take its time to get there.
Right.
So the elevator's going to do what it's going to do, and you can do that all you want.
Sure.
So some people approach it that way. What are some other ways that you can stay in your Zen zone or get back to your Zen zone if provoked by somebody who's just obliviously obnoxious?
Right. So I always tell people to have music. Music is the absolute quickest way, short of cheesecake or coffee or something. But music, you have to know what music moves you. So I have music that relaxes me. I listen to classical music when I study or I want to focus. I have music that, like or comedy.
Okay.
And then I have music that puts me in a mood.
Okay.
So when someone tries to change my mood, I listen to music that puts me in a different mood.
Oh.
And it's I want to say it's not that simple, but it kind of is if you're prepared.
Okay.
Right.
So now I know people want to know what's your favorite music that puts you in that mood?
Again, the classical music is relaxing and for concentration, but I like R&B music from the 70s, things like that.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Because it's more upbeat, it's dance, it's feel good, it's party,
Like
so.
Sly and Famous Stone and Sister
Cool and the
Sledge.
Gang
And,
all
oh
these
my
guys.
gosh, Cool
Yeah.
and the Gang. Okay.
Yeah. So the idea is just like food. It's just supposed to change what you're feeling in that moment.
Okay.
Because all you need is a change, and then you can get back into control of yourself. You just don't want to be triggered by something and then do something that you're going to regret or that's going to ruin your day or make you feel like that person feels.
Right.
So that's the cancer of it, is that someone does something to you and then you now feel like you have to do something to get back. So that's what you have to stop. And it's really quick once you realize that it's just a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And it can turn on quickly and you can turn it off as quickly, but you have to have something to compensate.
Have something to do it. So like music, number one. Okay, I love New Edition, Mariah Carey. There you go. I love some New Edition, BBD, Johnny Gill, Ralph Tresvant, even Bobby Brown, and now the new RBR. I know all of it. It's just those are my folks.
Yeah.
So if you're in a place, the mall, for example, if you're in a place where you don't have music, what other things can you do? Are there breathing exercises?
What's in the mall in the food court?
Food.
That's right. Cinnabons will always
Okay. Cinnabons are good. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, the bigger thing is just, like I said earlier, you have to realize that you live in a world where everyone is not raised by great parents. Everyone has not escaped traumas. Everyone doesn't have the same operating platform as you. So you have to be willing to experience these things because that's the world that we live in. I think people too often want to live in a fantasy land, or they want things to be perfect or everything to go their way.
Yeah.
But if you feel that way, then how do you think they feel? They feel the exact same way. Someone's dealt them a bad hand. They should be able to get away with stuff. Things shouldn't matter. They're doing what they feel. They're saying exactly what you're saying. It's just at a different level. So if you want your things to be true, then you have to allow them to have their things be true too.
Wow.
That's how we coexist.
Wow.
So that's the ultimate in handling, is just understanding that we all have a right to be here, as long as they're not breaking the law. And they're not at your house doing it.
So true. Well, thank you for that.
Sure.
I appreciate all those tips. I know our viewers appreciate those tips. Thank you so much for sharing that information. Now, if people would like to communicate with you and find out how they can get some personalized life coaching to make them better people, because you've made us better be able to handle obliviously obnoxious people. So now if people want to get their whole life together, courtesy of Lord Jimmy Wilson, please tell everyone how they would be able to do it.
You can reach me at lifeauditing.org. I have a website. It tells you more about what I do and how I approach life. And you can leave me a message and I'll be glad to get with you and help.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Now, are you on social media as well?
Not so much. Facebook, but I most of my work is referral and direct contact, so I don't have a lot of time for that because I get people to results. I'm not just giving out information and people can just tap into it. I mean, you have all these platforms where you can just find things to say if you want, or think chants or vision boards and all that stuff. So that's not my shtick, so to speak. I'm actually, like I said, finding the problems and solving them as opposed to just giving you a coping mechanism.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that makes you special and that makes you unique. That makes you who you are, Lord Jimmy Wilson.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for being here on Millena the Talk Show.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you for tuning in today for Millena the Talk Show and how to deal with obliviously obnoxious people. We'll see you next time.